So we'd like to welcome you today on a webinar talking about digital transformation. My name is Pascal Michaud. I'm today in Canada, and I'm with my colleague Andres Maldonado, who is today in Colombia. So our topic today is really how to adapt your family enterprise to this new reality of digital transformation and actually acceleration of digital transformation. We will cover three topics. The first one is to go through what is digital transformation, but we will do that from an owner's mindset, much more than from a technical perspective or a business management perspective. We will also provide you with elements of diagnostic. So where in your family enterprise do you need to accelerate your digital transformation? And we will also talk about the role of the owners in the oversight of everything going on in their assets, operating companies and investments. We will keep about 10 to 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. And therefore, please, if you have questions, just use the bottom, at the bottom of your screen, just use the button there, and we will accumulate the questions and we'll be able to go through them around 10 minutes before the end. We will send you also the slides tomorrow, so you will have this deck with you. So let's start with what is digital transformation. In fact, we want to talk about digital, but also the acceleration of digital. So what has been happening over the past months is that COVID-19 has forced the acceleration of the digital economy and the technology adoption in many different sectors. And because of that, we are actually in a situation where we have changed our behaviors in a dramatic way. And things that would have taken a decade, for example, to adopt, like virtual work, virtual learning, telemedicine, digital banking, food delivery, digital notary, even digital funerals, these things have been rapidly adopted into our mainstream behaviors, and many of those things will stay with us over the coming months and years. So this acceleration means that technologies such as machine learning, artificial intelligence, and other digital tools and approaches that were new to us are now becoming mainstream, which means that the next series of digital changes is just around the corner. And therefore, we're really talking about an acceleration. And we want to understand what it means for owners of family enterprises, what it means to be in this game, to be great at it, according to your verticals, the industries and sectors you're invested in, and how can you really be best of breed in those areas? Because it is clear that in the past few months, those companies which were already nimble in terms of digital strategies really have shown that they can outperform their competitors, and this performance will continue to last. So if you are out of the race, it becomes extremely difficult to catch up. And therefore, for us, it means that as we work with family enterprises and their family companies and investment, we see that the shift to digital is not only here to stay, but also accelerating. And therefore, as owners, you have to ensure that your system has a digital strategy that's also becoming very specialized according to the operating companies and the investments and the family office and the cybersecurity, all the elements that compose the protection of your assets, but also the evolution of your family enterprise and your ability to continue to create value. So Andres will talk to us about what is digital transformation and how it's changing our sectors.
Hello, I'm Andres. Great to be with you today. My objective here is to share some concepts around digital transformation. This is a term that has been going around for a long time, but we want to share our concepts looking at it from an owner's perspective, and also giving you some tools and basic language to relate to it, but again, from this owner's perspective, right? So the way we define digital transformation is just the use of technology, right? In the past, humans have used humans to do things. Now we have technology to complement the capabilities and sort of the input from humans. So really it's the use of technology to develop new business models and pivot into new opportunities. That's the first one. So it's a useful tool to develop new business models that before were sort of analogic. Now you can jump into digital. It's a new way to relate to clients, employees, and partners, and really to design a new experience. I think this one is key because it's really about how to delight your customers or your consumers using the tools so that they have a better customized experience, right? It's all about doing the same, do less, do more with less, right? And really delight your clients. The other concept, it's an ongoing process. It's not a sort of you go from 0 to 100, but it's really an ongoing building process. It's really a transformation process. So it's important to be patient and be growing in time. The other element here, we all heard a lot about the disruptive world. Really, technology is just one of these global forces shaping the business world that we're living in. And when we look at what are the elements of this technological change, if you may, yes, we hear all these terms, right, about artificial intelligence, robotics, security, social media, big data. We've all heard all these terms. It really is one of the disruptive global forces, but it's also a huge opportunity on how to leverage that technology to address some of the issues to the left, right? It facilitates globalization. It could help with the environment if done properly. It can also attend socio-political forces, but it's really about how to drive and how to leverage these technologies to really be on top of these disruptive global forces and use them to your advantage. So we were trying to find an example in which you're able to relate as a consumer in the day-to-day. And we think that this is a very good representation of how digital at work looks like, right? In the 80s, up to the 80s, we had this acetate in which we paid $5 for 10 songs. Then came along the cassette, which is a very interesting device, especially for my children, that they look at it and they don't really understand what it is. But it went through the 90s, and then you could pay $20 for 20 songs. Then came along the CD, in which you got 13 songs for $15 roughly, and it was quite a revolution, and you had to change the equipment in your car and at home to be able to play it. But then came this USB magically, in which you had 4,000 songs and $10 for it. And that was really revolutionary. And people thought, wow, the world is changing pretty quickly, especially us that lived from the 80s to the 2000s, thought this was absolutely amazing. But then finally along came Spotify, in which by $10 per month, roughly, you get access to all the music in the world. But not only that, but you get custom recommendations based on artificial intelligence. You're combined to a social platform to collaborate and build. And when you stand up from our current world that has Spotify, and you look to the past, in only a couple of decades, this industry revolutionized itself absolutely and completely. So that's a bit of what we're seeing as being a tangibilization of what digital works looks like. And when you look at it, your own industry, and you look back and you look forward, it's important to have these sort of references because it's really very quick and very dramatic, right? So we think this is a powerful concept to have around. And then along came COVID-19, right? Business longevity was sort of quite an issue before COVID, but then came COVID, and then this sort of lifespan reality for businesses has been deeply accelerated. If you could go to the next, Dina, please. Yes. So in COVID-19, well, these are some statistics that we've all read as well, but 43% of US small businesses have temporarily closed by COVID-19. 110,000 have permanently closed in the US, and also very large companies are closing. So it's not only that there was a trend in digital and that business longevity was quite an issue, but now it's really quite accelerated. And there's a sort of claim for survival that needs to be taken into account. And in the reference of this conference, it's really digital, how to use it as an opportunity to quickly pivot into new opportunities that before were just not as tangible. The other issue, which is quite important, is to really think about what's going on in each one of the different businesses and industries and how will the recovery look like, what are the phases, and how your industry is really able to leverage this opportunity to jump into digital, and also how worried you should be in terms of the particular industry which you're in, and how this new trend in COVID is going to change its dynamics, right? Industries like agriculture and banking were already in the way to digitalize by using data and remote channels, but other industries that were more analogic, if you may, have been hugely sort of shapen and reconfigured given the COVID, and they really must disrupt their business model to survive post-COVID, right? So it's very important to have a gauge on where you are in your industry. So before I hand it over to my colleague Pascal again, I wanted to sort of, in simple terms, try and communicate what a digital world means, right? What it looks like first, which is robots working alongside employees. These are all examples. Information systems that optimize material flows and trackings of KPIs. Real-time analytics and advanced processes for high quality, zero defects, automated inventories, predictive sales forecast based on huge data and value-based pricing, etc., which to some extent result in the acceleration of new products and services and new pricing formulas, engaging new, younger consumers. The new consumers grew digital, and really to engage them, these are terrific tools. Great knowledge and relevant data for customers to be able to custom design products for very specific needs. Segmentation, which is a big business word, now can even be more specific and custom designed for very specific little customer niches. Also great participation of sales through digital channels, really grow the percentage of sales through these channels. And lower operating and fixed costs, people, less process, and more agile and efficient process. And also the evolution of the organizational culture. It's all about also how people think and what tools people bring into the table to become more efficient. So design thinking, agile processes, etc. So I'm handing it over to Pascal to sort of help you think about how do you stand versus this digital world.
Thank you very much, Andres. So as we look at this digital transformation, we always think, so what about us, owners of family enterprises? What about our companies? To what extent is our family business or portfolio of operating businesses, or also our investments, our direct investments, and maybe our more passive investments, how vulnerable are they to digital transformation? Are we going to be in a position to create much more value in the coming months and years, or are we subject to important value destruction? So how do we think about that? Well, one of the ways we approach it is really through gradual, steady digital transformation versus significant digital turnaround. For example, if you're in the retail world and you're not yet omni-channel, you're really at risk of not being able to do any turnaround because the competition now is so fierce. So what is the position that you have right now in each of your industries or sectors? This is a very important conversation to have with board of directors, with executives, and also to think about the next capital investment projects, where to allocate your resources, and also what are the changes in your organization that need to take place in order to build a much more decisive organization. So one of the questions you could ask yourself together with your fellow owners and your executive leaders is, in which of the operating sectors and industries do we need to pivot digitally? And to what extent do we need to do that over the coming weeks, months? And how can we address those priorities? How are we going to prioritize and sequence all of these things that we think we have to do to meet international standards and benchmarks in our sectors and our industries? So this is about the what so far. What is digital transformation and how to think about it from an owner's perspective. Now we're going to talk about, in this second section, where in your family enterprise you can think of accelerating your digital transformation. And then we'll complement this with what are the roles of the owners in terms of strategic oversight. What do you need to be great at as owners to make sure that your system continues to build significant value? So let's talk about the where. For us, when we think about where is digital transformation happening in family enterprises, we like to take it from the owner's portfolio perspective. And what does this mean? Well, Andres, why don't you take us through these different stages of the family transformation? Or please, Andres, I will just do a couple more of these basic considerations, and then I'll pass it on to you. I think that will make more sense. So,
excellent.
Thank you. Over time, what we see is that we start with a family business, and in fact, for all kinds of reasons, we might split that company, maybe for business specialization, or risk management, or tax purposes. We'll separate our assets that are more service-oriented from our assets that are more real estate-oriented. And what we'll do also is, of course, we'll add companies, additional businesses, adjacent, very different businesses as well to our portfolio, investments, real estate. And over time, without almost thinking of it, we either have a beast, a very large system, a very large portfolio of companies and investments, or we've cleaned it over time and we have a very lean and very specific set of businesses and investments in a few verticals. So in any case, it is very important to ask ourselves, how is that portfolio impacted by digital transformation? And are we the right owners for each of those companies and those investments? Are we able to keep those companies and investments agile? And do we have the right business processes? Do we have the right talent? Do we know how to allocate resources among these different companies according to their digital needs? This is a huge question. So it's very important that the portfolio that has evolved over time in our family enterprise be now analyzed from the angle of digital survival. So one of the things that owners will do over time is really to shift from owner-operator to strategic investor and sometimes even to asset manager. So what does that mean? Most families start by being owner-operators, but operating companies takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of talent. And sometimes as we move into the next generations, we have different needs or skill set or tastes and passions and interests. And most families will move towards strategic investor. And here in that middle part, they might have a portfolio that's composed of one core business with a couple of adjacent businesses or diversify largely. The challenge with diversification is you really have to be good at what you're invested in. Warren Buffett, I believe, called it the circle of competence. So if you're not really very good and very deep in those verticals you're invested in, it's very hard to oversee them as an owner, even more so today in the digital world. So what are the options? Some families will either keep a strategic portfolio but try to make it leaner, more specialized in things that they're really, really good at and where they can really understand digital transformation and lead it. Other families will go back to being owner-operator of one core business or a couple of businesses, but much more hands-on. This is to the left. Other families will really move to the right into asset management. So what does that mean? It means that some of the companies that where we were controlling owner, we will sell part of it and maybe become significant minority, or even smaller minority in those companies, and try to diversify ourselves in investing in different kinds of sectors and industries, and also investing in new industries that are shaping these new technologies, so that we start really understanding what they mean. So there are choices here, and they're very important. They require very detailed conversations among owners to confirm what are we going to be good at, and where are we going to position ourselves? And in that place where we position ourselves, how are we going to address digital? For us, this is one of the key conversations that owners need to have. Now, you might also have most of your investments and activities and assets in a family office. You might have sold your core business, or you might have moved into a lot of different investments over time, and the family office is where you strategically lead your value creation. And in such cases, what we want to emphasize, and we're here talking about a single family office, we want to emphasize that in your investment management and your asset allocation, whether it's direct investing, asset management, and a mix of that, you really have to think very carefully what will be your digital strengths. Now, in the middle part, in the legal and tax, administration and lifestyle, you also have to protect yourself in terms of cybersecurity, but also adopt new technologies that will make you better, more agile. And therefore, the whole team at the family office also needs a strategic planning process that really involves digital. What kind of digital transformations do we need to do in the different areas of our family office? How do we need to conduct them? What to prioritize? And always think that value and net worth protection and security of the family are the most important things, as we all know. So these are probably the areas where you need to really start reinforcing your digital thought process. Now, in terms of the life cycle, we have this classic view here of, in a stable world, we go from startup and we grow our companies, and at some point we hit the maturity stage because our industry or our company are no longer able to reinvent themselves, and then we might decline or reshape or move into adjacent fields or even completely different fields. What is changing now with the acceleration of this digital transformation is that the disruption can happen anywhere. You might be in a startup mode in one of the best leading edge sector, and in a couple of months from now, you might be disrupted. This is something that we would not see even like 3 years ago, but now disruption can happen everywhere. So it's both an opportunity, but also a challenge. The key question is, can I disrupt other companies in any stage of the life cycle, or am I at risk of being disrupted? It really requires to say, we're going to better understand what we're going to be great at, and maybe not invest in too many directions, because the efforts we will need to deploy and the intelligence we will need to deploy will need to be so much deeper and sharper and faster. So thinking about the business life cycle is another way for owners to put their minds around digital transformation. So finally, back to you, Andres.
Thank you. One of the key things that Pascale was mentioning is really understand where you lie in terms of digital readiness or digital maturity within your operating companies and also your investment, but particularly your operating companies. So we have developed this index of digital readiness, which has dimensions and degree for each one of the dimensions. And what's critical for owners is who should focus where, and what type of forum needs to address the different elements, right? So these are all the dimensions that we think are critical. At the center is sustainability, which for sure needs to be the owner's focus. How sustainable is my business system going forward? And then the other element that we consider critical for owners is what is the culture and change management within the organization and the governance that we have within the group. But then there are other critical dimensions to have the board focus on, basically client experience, innovation and new business models, and of course, strategy, and really understand how those are tied to digital. And then there's top management focus issues such as process, technology, data and analytics, and also related to culture and management. So if you go through your operating company, you should really think on what is the degree of development in each one of these areas. If you're still in an analog world, if you have an initial level of adopting digital, or if you go all the way up to digital, and really understand for each dimension where you are and what are the opportunities and the gaps that you need to bridge to help the organization move along, but clearly from an owner's perspective. Boards have a big role as well, but we believe that owners have a critical role in providing this assessment about the sustainability and the culture to really move into this world. So on the next one, it's key for you to do a digital assessment. What are the, based on the dimensions and degrees presented, are you digitally behind? Are you starting to be digital capable? Are you mastering and leveraging digital? And are you leading a digital transformation? And this can go through not only operating companies, but also look at it for the direct investments, for the family office, and also for the financial wealth management, right? So really have a clear assessment on where you are in these different dimensions. So finally, we're going to go, before the questions, into what is the owner's oversight role, and sort of try and summarize what are the key concepts that we've shared today from the owner's perspective. So as an owner, you require first gaining altitude, objectivity, and developing clear long-term goals in general, but in particular applying this to digital. Challenging more than ever the attachment to one's business models, traditions, and legacy. Many times we see board of directors and management attaching to what have made them successful up to now. But really, from an owner's perspective, you should be challenging that from a fresh perspective. Also looking outward and understanding macro trends, which I guess you're doing by participating in this type of webinars. But really keep connected to the out world and search for opportunities and threats. Owners have a big role in identifying new opportunities, and especially in this new world. And then, as we pointed out in the previous page, setting up an innovation culture. A lot of the culture of the person or of the family gets adopted by the company. So really being thoughtful about what is the culture that you want to promote and role-playing it. And then also, which is hard, but it's key in this current world, is letting go of investments and people that aren't working. This is a very fast-moving world to have people lagging and investments lagging behind. And connecting to the digital reflection that we've had, focus on change, speed, and altitude, really to drive superior performance. So that's key from an owner's perspective. And then to simplify, we see that as an owner, you have sort of two choices, which are unbundled and which we think it's a clean way on thinking how to leverage these tools and opportunities. One is to exploit, to do incremental innovation and really drive this into the operating companies and the investments, which is use these new tools to improve products, services, and processes, and sort of complement your current business model. But there is another logic, which is explore, relating more to radical innovation, which is bringing a fresh and different approach to problems and opportunity that leverage technology directly. So it's really the brand new world. And those things should be unbundled. It's very tough for the same organization, for the same board, for the same investment office to do both things at the same time. It involves different capabilities and should be thought about unbundled. So let's exploit a little bit more what this exploit concept means, which the catchphrase is think outside the box, right? Within your business, look at quick wins, redesign the client experiences, incorporate agile processes and ways of thinking, align and empower the team with a new purpose, and really drive this culture into the operating and investments. And by explore, we mean think without the box, right? Develop new products and services, new channels, promote the culture of innovation, leverage and invest in new technologies, and really explore partnerships with new players. This is absolutely key because it's what connects you to higher speed people and organizations, and gives you a way to learn and also to be successful in these new ventures, right? So partnerships play a key role. So back to Pascal to sort of wrap it up, have some useful questions, and then open up for your questions as well.
Thank you very much, Andres. So back into how to address these conversations, to socialize these different themes among the owners and with the board and the executive leadership team. We think that one of these very nice ways to organize these questions is to go back and think about the important changes that your operational businesses or your investments have experienced in the last 10 years. And how did you lead value creation? How did you stay nimble, agile, best of breed in those moments? Because these are part of your secret sauce, your special recipe. And those skills that you've had, you can redeploy them now into this new world where you're experiencing important changes that are just in 3 or 4 months, really changing the world. And this kind of speed of transformation will remain. So how will you use those unique skill set, this combination of a very good know-how, know-who, ways of directing partnerships, ways of thinking about new products and services, ways of thinking about new pricing, ways of financing new investments? Are you going to take that thinking process and bring it into the new world? That's one way to have this important conversation. We also think that the owners, in order to oversee the digital transformation, need to ensure that there's an assessment. It can be conducted with experts. It can be conducted in partnership with the board of directors and the executive leadership team, but really assess the digital maturity of your family business and investment portfolio. And then define guidelines, define these processes that will guide the whole organization in terms of thinking about the exploit agenda that Andres was speaking about versus the explore agenda. If you can come up with 3 or 4 elements of strategy in the exploit and 3 or 4 elements of strategy in the explore, this will provide a lot of unity to the organization to continue to thrive and to prioritize and sequence what will happen in terms of the digital transformation strategy across the enterprise. And then you have to really be a promoter of acquisition of digital capabilities and disruptive mentality in all of the forums and leadership teams that compose your family enterprise. I think being the preacher of that becomes very important because it really motivates the whole organization to keep thinking about how to be more agile, how to have a better culture of decisiveness in this world of digital transformation.
Just as an anecdote, in our profession, we fly around a lot, and we've been having conversations about how will our protocols and our sort of agendas change after COVID. And we've, as a matter of an example, we've said a lot of the traveling that we used to do will really be replaced by these virtual platforms, because for content, it's quite efficient to interact via Zoom or any other of the platforms to get sort of the content done. But then the emotional connection is really not as good or possible through these virtual platforms. So probably when you travel, you'll travel for this emotional and personal connection, but most of the content will be done remotely, right? That's a scenario that we're contemplating in the future. And it reflects on an example of how we think about COVID. I think that there will be new behavior, new platforms that have been exploited in COVID that are more efficient, are quicker, are simpler, that people will definitely adopt. For example, with being able to get a lot of the interaction done with other sort of service or product providers through digital or through a chat, as opposed to calling a call center. That's some of the things we all have experienced and changed habits quickly and adopted new technologies. So we definitely think that in a wide array of businesses and industries, COVID will represent an acceleration of digital, that it's here to stay. And it's like a pendulum that has gone to one extreme, but it'll come back, but a bit, not totally. And a lot of these protocols and the ways of interaction are here to stay, which I think it's very exciting, and it's very interesting as humankind to be able to experience these new changes in a very accelerated way.
Thank you very much to all of you for joining us for this webinar. Andres and I were really pleased to think through these issues as we live them with you in family enterprises. And we support you in finding a way to engage or reinforce the conversations among yourself. They're very important. So if you could have one action item coming out of this webinar, is to talk among owners, talk with your board of directors, talk with executive leaders of your system, and try to figure out an agenda, a realistic, engaging, positive, energizing agenda to address the digital transformation. It's a positive change. Change is always difficult, but if you power through, there will be beautiful things on the other side. So we really encourage you to engage in those conversations and keep having them. They're not once in a lifetime or once a year. They're really an ongoing conversation. If you can find time once a month or once every 3 months to engage in such conversations with your peers, already this will be a huge positive impact in your system. What about you,
Thank
Andrew?
you. Yes, if I had only one recommendation, it would be to assess your operating companies, assess your investment portfolio, to really understand where those businesses and investments stand versus digital. Don't be scared of proposing this assessment. We believe this is an owner's responsibility, and it's required for the owners to do it, to really get a good understanding on where your operating businesses and investments lie. And from there, there's a wide range of conversations and of reflections that are quite powerful but well, our best recommendation would be to assess, really understand where you stand in versus this digital new world. And thank you so much for having us. Hopefully we inserted some powerful ideas in your head.
Thank you.